What are the different scopes in JavaScript? By scope, we mean the lifetime of a variable, i.e. where that variable is visible and available for you to use in your code. And in JavaScript, we have not many, but just a couple of different types of scopes. So any variables declared outside of functions. So I've just declared a variable called asim outside of any function. These are termed as global variables, and they are available from any part of your application. So including deeply nested inside a bunch of other functions, you can still access the asim variable in the global scope as long as it hasn't been redefined in any other scope. So another way to define a global variable is actually to add it as a property to your global object. So because we're in a browser, our global object is window. And on the window object, I can define a property called mu. Let me bring up the console here. Now I've defined a property called mu. I can use it and it gets printed out. And actually we can use it just the same way as we would use the variable asim, which we'd defined as a global as well. But the reason we can use mu as a global variable the same way as we can use asim as a global variable is because all global variables are actually properties of the window object. So now if I actually typed window.asim, it will now print 1 because when we defined asim as a variable in global scope, it automatically added a property of asim to the window object, and that's really what's going on when we declare a global variable. Now this window object is only available in browsers. If you are coding up JavaScript inside Node, the global object is global, but we have the same effect, we have the same property of global variables with the global object in Node as well. So that's one, we've got globally scoped variables. Another scope which we have in JavaScript is function or local scope variables. So if inside our function mu, I declared a variable foo and I made it equal to 1, if I try to use that variable outside of that function mu, let's see what happens. So if I refresh the page, you can see here it says uncaught reference error foo is not defined because the scope of the variable foo is only alive, it's only available to us from within the scope, within the block of this function which is defined by the curly braces. So outside of this block, foo does not exist anymore. So because we're trying to print it out, it's giving us an error. If we try to print that out inside the function mu, and then we called mu, and then we refresh the page, you can see now it actually prints out the value of foo because it's within the function, and within the function, the variable foo is available to it, it's alive, it's visible to our code within this function block. Now, if you're coming from other languages like Java or even Python or C++, you might think that JavaScript has something called block level scope. So, for instance, in other languages, the variable j and perhaps the variable I would only be visible inside this block here. Outside of this block, those variables would not be visible. But in fact, in JavaScript, so if I did console.log.j, you can see it actually gets printed out. And that's because JavaScript does not have the concept of block level scope. Those variables will be available outside of the block level scope they were declared in. And because this for loop is in the global scope, actually what we're doing here is that we're creating global variables I and j as well. So there's only really two scopes in which a variable can exist, either a function scope or a global scope.